Vancouver. She was the #1 in the World Cup Series last year. Fastest qualifier this morning. It all looks very, very good for Marion Kreiner. Marion Leeson of Canada, absolutely nothing to lose as she goes down on the red course. And we'll see how she gets on. Wearing number 24. Well, the mist is coming and going, and already Marion Kreiner with a decent lead on those first five gates. And now Leeson of Canada starting to come back in, and Kreiner's going to have to work for this one. Uh-oh, a mistake from the Canadian. She had to push hard. She was doing exactly that, but just couldn't hold on to the line. So Marion Kreiner with a very good run. Ledecker wearing 17, all in white. 5th in the first round of the World Cup this season, so another good result here will put her close to the top of the standings, obviously depending on what the rest of the field do. Tudor-Gasheva was 2nd, and she goes in the last heat. Ledecker has work to do as Schuffmann of Austria piles on the pressure on the first few gates, but makes a slight mistake, and now they're pretty even coming into the last section. Off the steep pitch onto the flat. Who's carrying the best speed into the finish? Oh, it's some good riding from Esther Ledecker of the Czech Republic. She takes it. Only a fraction of a second in it, but Ledecker is comfortably through. Good riding, stuck with it. She was certainly behind at the halfway stage, and she goes through to meet Cobra. I think Cobra will be happy to have Ledecker as an opponent in the quarterfinals rather than Schuffmann. Schuffmann going so well early on, one slight mistake, and she lost her speed crucially just before it turned from steep to flat, and she just lost more and more time over those last 5 gates. So halfway through the first knockout round. Now we go to Patricia Kumar. 2nd in the World Cup standings last year, 6th last time out. Stephanie Muller, her opponent. Kumar on the yellow course. Yellow and red this year as opposed to blue and red as it's been for the last, what, 15 years. Good start from Stephanie Muller. Oh, just as I say that, one mistake followed by another as she tries to correct her line, and Stephanie Muller is out of this one. It's an all-Swiss first round, so the team won't be too unhappy, unless of course they feel that Muller had more potential to go the whole distance in this parallel slalom event. But it's Kumar who goes through. 2 podiums last year. She didn't get a win. Maybe things are going to be different this year. Nadia Ochner, as we just have a look at Stephanie Muller. Give her credit. She did everything she possibly could to get back online. But if you put too much pressure on the front of the board, on the nose, you're just going to dig a deep hole for yourself, and your speed is going to vanish. And that's when you tend to go up and over the top of the board, just as Muller did. Tudor-Gasheva versus Ilikina. 2 Russians, both ferociously competitive. Tudor-Gasheva, in my book, is the best finisher. She usually comes strong on the last few gates, so don't rule her out at any stage on this run. Who's going to attack the top? They both are, as expected. Tudor-Gasheva perhaps with half a board's length. Now she extends it with 2 successive really clean turns, but starting to lose control. She's not holding back, taking all the risk. Tudor-Gasheva desperate to beat her teammate Ilikina, who's the silver medalist from the Olympics in 2010. Great ride so far from Tudor-Gasheva. Surely she's safe. Yes, she is. Oh my goodness. Well, hell, can you believe that? Ilikina was at least a board length behind with 2 gates to go. There's something on that yellow course that is very difficult to negotiate in the closing stages. Ilikina can't believe it. She can't believe it. We need to see both women at the same time, because Tudor-Gasheva at this stage was a long way ahead. The last 3 gates on the yellow seem to be much harder to negotiate. Tudor-Gasheva also. She thought she had it. I'm afraid not. Just a fraction of a second. It's Ilikina, the Olympic silver medalist, who goes through, opposed to Tudor-Gasheva, who was 4th in the World Cup standings last season. So on to the men's, the 8th final, and Lucas Mathis, the favourite, having been the fastest qualifier by some margin this morning. Parallel slalom event number 2 for the World Cup season after a cancellation last week, and the women's race certainly interesting. The men with their first knockout round. This is Mathis on the yellow course up against Germany's Patrick Bussler, and both men riding well on the steep section. Bussler just that fraction wider, and that's why he's lost half a metre or so on Mathis, who was the fastest qualifier, and of course had a good run in Carreza earlier on, where he won last year. Oh, good run from Mathis. That's convincing. 0.75 the margin. Second run, Bergman against Morrison. It's Bergman of Germany on the yellow, and Canada's Matthew Morrison. He's a great rider, Morrison, but he's just let it get a little bit ragged on the opening gates. Now he tidies it up. Look at the angulation that he achieves. So quick from one edge to the other. Now he attacks the last section. Still pretty even. Bergman coming back into this one. Who's going to get it? Very tight indeed. And Morrison missing out by 100th of a second. And all credit to Alexander Bergman, the absolute outsider for that one. He's knocked out Matthew Morrison, who finished second in a Rosa. Well, there were mistakes from both men, certainly, but it was a really aggressive run from both the German and the Canadian. Matt Morrison maybe lost it actually at the very top of the course. It was a scrappy opening few gates from him. His midsection was superb, put him back into contention. He had it by a board length with 3 or 4 gates to go, but Alexander Bergman stuck at the task, and he goes through to meet Lucas Mathis. That's going to be a really tough matchup for him. Now, Rock Flander of Slovenia, 16th in the World Cup standings last year, up against Kisslinger of Austria, who's bib 27. There he is, Kisslinger on the red course. Rock Flander 8th in the PGS. In fact, my mistake, I'm not quite sure why they've switched over for the start of this run. Good run so far from Rock Flander on the red, the Slovenian. Look, oh, just as I said, he was looking very smooth and safe. He goes down and hands it to Kisslinger. So another Austrian goes through, and the fans will enjoy that. Sylvain Dufour now of France is preparing to go, and having won the first World Cup of the season. Dufour wearing yellow as the World Cup leader. Is he going to get another 1,000 points? He's under a bit of pressure. Baumeister of Germany is having a sensational run, and Dufour's going to have to produce his very best in the closing few. He's starting to panic, getting later and later and later on the turns, and Baumeister is just disappearing over the horizon. An easy win for the Germans. Sylvain Dufour, the World Cup leader, is in danger of losing the yellow bib. Well, sensational run from Baumeister. He got ahead, he put the pressure on Dufour, and Dufour couldn't cope with it. He tried, I'll give him that, but instead of just riding smoothly and trying to be a little more accurate, he tried to get more and more aggressive and made more and more mistakes. So a good run from Baumeister, good lessons learned there from him. This is when Dufour realised he was behind. A very wide turn due to the loss of balance. Well, Baumeister will meet either a Slovenian or an Italian in the next round. Izidor Susterits of Slovenia is up against Aaron March, the 27-year-old Italian. That's Susterits we're looking at, and he's lined up on the yellow course. One run only, remember. And down goes the gate. Better start from Susterits. Well, he's thrown away the advantage that he had out of the gate, and Aaron March is starting to establish himself. A board's length ahead, perhaps, and looking a little more fluent through the turns. That's exactly where Dufour had problems, but Sustrich survives. Aaron March still, though, with the lead. Coming into the last three, I think it's the Italian who's going through. He does. 0.72 the margin. Through to the quarterfinals. March versus Baumeister, Kisslinger versus Schock, Mathis versus Bergman. That's the lineup at the moment, with just two names to go through, and we've got two of the another two veterans. The introduction of prize money has certainly had the effect of keeping guys on the tour for much longer. Grabner, Schock. We've still got Benjamin Carl, Andy Promiger still to come. So, Benny Carl versus Nevin Galmarini, and you'd be a brave man to put your money on Galmarini. There's Benny Carl wearing 15, the Olympic silver medalist, the parallel giant slalom world champion. But with the snow in the condition that it's in, mistakes are heavily punished and recovery very difficult. Both men playing safe in the opening gates. Good run so far from Benny Carl. No mistakes and nice and accurate, and that's paying off. Galmarini just finding himself fractionally behind, but they're both riding on opposite sides, so they're not really seeing what's going on the other course. Still good riding from Benny Carl. Gets a little bit tight. Can he hold it to the line? Yes! Oh my goodness, once again the red course proves advantageous, I think we could say. Yeah, Benny Carl can't believe that. He had the lead with 4 gates to go. We need to see a replay, because that's about the 4th time this has happened. The yellow course rider has been comfortably ahead, only to be outdone on the last 3 gates. And I suspect that the gates aren't set at quite the same angles. There is, of course, the possibility that the red course riders are just carrying the speed better through the final turns. And take nothing away from Nevin Galmarini. He really attacked the last few, but it's happening so regularly that I can't help thinking the yellow course is slightly quicker through the closing gates. Yeah, Benny Carl, I think that's what they're discussing. So Galmarini is through, Carl is out. Now let's see what Andy Promiger can do, wearing bib number 1, second fastest qualifier on the day, up against Justin Reiter of USA, who was 15th fastest. So surely the smart money this time is on Andy Promiger, but so many mistakes have happened. Let's see how he does. He's drawn the yellow course, which seems to have a little bit of a jinx on it, and I suspect he needs a lead of at least 2 boards lengths going into those last 5 gates. So far, Promiger, no mistakes, very smooth run. I think this is one of the best rides we've seen so far. Lucas Mathis was also clean, who went in the very first heat, and Promiger has established just the lead he needed to secure victory. 0.62 the margin, easy win for Promiger, and the Austrians get yet another man through to the quarterfinals. The women's quarterfinals about to get underway here in Bad Gastien. Marion Kreiner, number 15, the fastest qualifier this morning. She looked very good in that first knockout phase, beat Marianne Leeson of Canada. She's up against Russia's Soboleva, and Soboleva qualifying in 8th, so a little bit of ground to make up. There you see the lineup for the quarterfinals. Ledecker versus Amelie Kober of Germany. Zogan Kummer, that will be an interesting all-Swiss lineup for heat number 3. And then Jenny of Switzerland up against Ilikina of Russia, who knocked out Tudor-Gasheva. That was a very tight race. That was one of the ones where the yellow course proved a little bit tricky on the last 3 gates. Let's hope that we don't get too much of that in the quarterfinals. So Kreiner on the yellow course. Had a look at the qualifying times, and each of the athletes has a run on both courses, and some were quicker on the red, some were quicker on the yellow. Oh, a mistake from both riders. Kreiner must have thought she was out of that one, but she recovered well. She was about to disappear into the crowd, but suddenly thought of looking over her shoulder, realised that Sobelova had made a mistake as well, and Kreiner gets a reprieve. My goodness, that was close to going out. Now let's hopefully we'll get another look at that. It's so rare that they both make mistakes on the same gate, and Kreiner knows that she was a little bit lucky there. There's the mistake from the Russian. Down she goes, but she's lost her speed, and very, very difficult to get the backside edge to work when you've lost your speed like that. Kreiner works it well, keeps the momentum going, somehow stays on course, and has gone through to the semi-finals. She was lucky. She was very lucky. 7th in the first World Cup of the season. She's already guaranteed to finish in the top 4. Kober versus Ledecker now. Amelie Kober of Germany going on the red, as you can see, and Esther Ledecker. Kober qualifying in 12th position. Ledecker was 4th fastest, so from that we can assume that the white rider on the yellow course is going to be a little bit quicker, but Kober is giving it absolutely everything. She's not out of it quite yet as they come down to the last few turns, and Kober will know that this is where the advantage swings her way, but she may have given away too much time. She has, and Ledecker of the Czech Republic goes through to meet Kreiner of Austria. Kober never really relaxed on that run. I think she realised she was under a bit of pressure from the Czech. And as far as Ledecker goes, fully focused on the job in hand. Out of the corner of the eye, she would have been able to see exactly what Amelie Kober was up to. But she does so well, so accurate on those backside turns, and that's the difference between the two riders. Ledecker gets the shout, as we thought, and she has gone through to the semi-finals. Well, we haven't seen a faultless run so far, and that is something to do with, it's probably all to do with the snow conditions here in Bad Gastein. Julie Zog of Switzerland now against Patricia Kummer. Kummer going on the red, or choosing the red. Fairly even. Kummer seems to be having problems getting off the front side edge, but the turns are clean, just carving her way down. I think a different tactic from her. Nice and early on the turn, all the way through the course, and she still leads comfortably as they come down to the last few turns. There's the first mistake from Kummer, and has it allowed Zog back into this one? Not quite. Margin is very small indeed, 0.41. Patricia Kummer taking it very coolly indeed. That is exactly what Amelie Kober needed to do on the last run. No panic, just ride smoothly, keep the technique good. There was one stumble there. Just got a fraction too close to the gate. Otherwise, a beautifully smooth run from Patricia Kummer. And in the next minute or so, she will discover who she meets in the semi-finals. Will it be Ladina Genie of Switzerland, who qualified in 10th, or Ilakina, who qualified in 15th? Genie on the red course. The better seed choosing the course they want to race on, and the seeds established by their position in the qualifying. But Jenny making a dreadful mistake there, just sliding away on that front side turn. And now the Olympic silver medalist is free to cruise across the line and into the semi-finals, where she will meet Patricia Kummer. So the Russian fans still have something to hang around for before they head to the Glühwein tent. Well, I think the best run so far has been Patricia Kummer, who tried to stay on the inside of all the ruts that are developing and just stayed very, very smooth. It wasn't the most aggressive run we've seen, but it was certainly the smoothest. And that gave her a relatively easy victory in the quarterfinals against Julie Zog of Switzerland. And she will now face Ilukina as we go back to the men's competition. We're down to the last 8. And in 5 minutes' time or so, we'll be down to the last 4. Well, we still have the world #1 from last year in this competition, Andy Promiger, who will go in the 4th of the quarterfinals. First, though, we start with Lucas Mathis on the yellow, up against Alexander Bergman, who knocked out Matt Morrison of Canada. That was a little bit of a surprise. I think he's going to find Lucas Mathis a different kettle of fish. There's Mathis wearing bib #2, 3rd in the World Cup rankings at the moment, fastest of the qualifiers this morning, and Lucas Mathis looking very, very good in the first of the rounds. Mathis on the yellow has to check his speed on those first 2 gates, and he's allowed the opponent to get clear. Little switch from Mathis, but he's now a gate behind. That's a disaster and a real opportunity for Bergman to come through and take the win. If he can stay clean, it will be a semi-final position for Bergman, but here comes Mathis. He's trying hard, but he's left it too late. That mistake at the top costing him, and Alexander Bergman, against the odds in the first round, he goes through. Even more against the odds in the quarterfinals, he's through to the semis. Well done to Alex. That was an excellent run. He held his nerve. He must have been aware of what happened to Mathis. Thrown up in the air, way too wide, applies the edges, but he's off the race line into the soft stuff. A double 180 to try and get back on the course, but he must have known at that stage he was then reliant on a mistake from Alexander Bergman, and it never came. So Germany with a semi-finalist already. Kisslinger racing in this next heat for Austria, and he's up against Simon Schock of Switzerland. Who would Bergman rather face? Well, I have to say, Simon Schock looked to be on very good form, but that's a scrappy start. They're finding those first few gates very tough indeed. Maybe they should be just taken a little more conservatively than the rest. Still even as they go through the halfway stage. Simon Schock has recovered well, but just as I say that, he makes another mistake, and it should be an easy run now for Kisslinger of Austria to come through. He does. A local man through to the semi-finals. Big cheers from the crowd. Seb Kisslinger is going to face Alex Bergman. The big names are tumbling one after the other. They've been around a while. Perhaps they've been around too long. The next generation starting to establish themselves, and Seb Kisslinger is one of them. Baumeister of Germany against Aaron March, and Aaron March looked pretty good. He knocked out Sustritz of Slovenia in the first round. It was a clean run. We'll see whether he can do the same. Qualified in 17th, and in fact he was in 11th. Baumeister in 14th, just a fraction of a second between the 2 men in the first run. Baumeister 32 on the yellow is getting further and further behind. He's now reliant on a mistake from Aaron March of Italy if he wants to go through to the semis. He's coming back well in the closing stages, but March holds on. 0.49, just under half a second between the 2, and Italy now have a semi-finalist. Well, the key with the ruts developing as the way they are is to keep your board on the ground. If you get thrown airborne, you can't turn, you can't change your line, and you find yourself late on the next turn, and it's proving very hard. And you're also off the race course, which puts you into the soft snow at the side, and you lose speed and the ability to turn as well. Now Promiga versus Galmarini, the last of the quarterfinals. Switzerland against Austria. Promiga, remember, the world #1 from last year. Is he going to continue at the start of the season as he did at the end of last year? It certainly looks that way. Starting to pile on the pressure now. Promiga well aware of the dangers of the yellow course, and he built enough of a lead, but only just 0.09 of a second, and he was comfortably ahead with 4 gates to go. And I think he knew he had to attack from the top. So the man from Sun Johan has got himself into the semi-finals, and the key here is that no one else in the semis is really going to be, is likely to be a threat in the overall World Cup standings at the end of the season. So an opportunity now for Andy Promiga just to push himself up the rankings and maybe take a step closer to defending the title that he won last year. And the start gate now full of the top women, 4 of them. Number 15, Marion Kreiner, qualified fastest and must now be the favourite to go through. She goes on yellow for her bid to get through to the final rather than the small final. There will be a small final to determine who finishes 3rd and 4th. Ledecker, on the other hand, qualified in 4th fastest, so the margin between them only half a second or so in the qualifying. Ledecker will have got a huge amount of confidence. She's already knocked out Schuffman fairly easily in the first round, and then knocking out Amelie Kober in the second round, but there were fractions in it last time. Marion Kreiner, last year's World Cup winner on the yellow course. 1,000 points would certainly go a long way to helping her defend her title, and already she's got just a fraction of a second lead, but needs to keep the board on the ground. There are some big ruts developing. The light is better than it's been in previous rounds. Kreiner certainly not having this one all her own way. Ledecker pushing very, very hard as they come down into the last 5 gates, and still Ledecker is there. Kreiner's going to have to work her magic on the yellow if she's going to go through. It's going to be close. Oh, it is Ledecker who comes through, and once again the last 3 gates determining the winner. And if you're on the yellow, you're in real trouble if you don't have a decent lead coming into those last few gates. We've seen it time and time again. Well done to Ledecker. She's gone through. She's knocked out last year's World Cup champion, and that will give her a massive amount of confidence when it comes to the final in 10 minutes time. Ledecker, who was 15th in the World Cup standings at the end of last season, and she never made the podium. Well, she's guaranteed a finish in the top 2 now, and so a PB coming her way. She was consistent though, nearly always got through. Only in the very final World Cup La Molina did she fail to get through to the knockout phases. Now this is Russia with Ilakina up against Patricia Kummer. Patricia Kummer rode very nicely in the quarterfinals. Looks as though Ilakina's panicking a little on the top turns. It's reactionary riding from her. Kummer still very smooth. A little stumble though from Kummer. Can she recover in time to come through? She's still close enough. Remember, she's on the red gate, so has the advantage at this stage. It's going to be Kummer's, and the margin 0.55 in the end. Good riding. Very, very good riding, and she's going to be difficult to beat. She will face Ledecker in the final round. Ledecker, who beat Schuffman and then Kober and finally Marion Kreiner. Will she be able to get past Patricia Kummer as well? It's going to be tough. Very smooth. She's a tall figure, very powerful, but at the same time, both accurate and smooth. A perfect mix. And Switzerland will be fairly confident that they're going to pick up the 1,000 points today. So there you see the semi-final lineup for the men's. Alex Bergman up against Seb Kisslinger. Erin March takes on Andy Promiger of Austria. So two Austrians, Italy and Germany all represented. The Central European nations dominating at the moment. Canada lost Marion Leeson in the women's event. The Russians have lost their chance of taking the win in the women's, but Ilikina could still get on the podium. Bergman versus Kisslinger, the first of the men's semi-finals. Bergman, who knocked out Lucas Mathis, and there he is wearing bib number 31. It's a good run from Bergman so far, and he's not going to leave anything to the last few gates, but he's pushing just that little bit too hard, and a stumble from Bergman just about blew his chances. Only 0.08 of a second in it, and he was about 0.8 of a second clear with 5 gates to go. So Bergman needs to learn his lesson from that one. He's unlikely to get away with a mistake like that in the final. There it is. What a recovery, though. What a fantastic recovery. Look how early he is on the next turn, despite that massive mistake. Well, there's not a lot of fear in there. He's just riding on instinct and riding very, very nicely indeed. Seb Kisslinger, well, it's been a good run. He still has another run to go in the small final. Kisslinger beating Simon Schock. He was certainly delighted to have done that. And, of course, taking out Rock Flander, another of the veterans in the first round. So the second semi-final. March on yellow. Andy Promiger, last year's world #1, on red. Not a lot between them on the first few gates. Erin March maybe a fraction behind at one stage, but he's pretty much pulled it back. Going through the halfway stage now. Still nothing between them. March versus Promiger. March on the yellow course now makes his bid for glory. Is he going to make it? Oh, it's tight. So tight. And so tight you can't call it. Absolute dead heat. What happens? They better put another course up so he can have 3 in the final. Well, they don't have a first run to say who goes through, and I think it's going to be the fastest qualifier who goes through. And that means that Andy Promiger will make it, because he finished second fastest in qualifying, with Erin March down in 11th place. Well, how unlucky is that? My goodness. Well, it looked as though Erin March was comfortably ahead. It was a brilliant finish from Promiger. Absolutely sensational. 17 is Esther Ledecker. She's a finalist today and looking for a PB up against Patricia Kummer. Kummer second in the World Cup standings last year. She didn't actually get a win, but she did finish on the podium in the last 2 events, one in Arosa and then, of course, in La Molina. And the parallel giant slalom cancelled at the World Cup finals in Sestriere. Was it Sestriere or Sierra Nevada? Either way, the parallel giant slalom cancelled at the end of the last season, so only 5 events counting for the title. as we see the lineup. Kreiner versus Ilikina, as I say, will be the next run. And number 15 is Marion Kreiner. Just checking the start handles. They can position them where they like them. Some like them to be a long way forward. And Marion Kreiner obviously liking to bring it back just a fraction. She's lined up on the red course. Where's your money? Will it be Kreiner or Ilikina to take the final slot on the podium? 600 points for third, only 500 for fourth. So 100 World Cup points, the differential between these two. And of course, a few Swiss francs extra going to the winner. Marion Kreiner on red, as we saw, with Ilikina starting pretty well. Good tight turns from Ilikina, and Kreiner's going to have to work very, very hard on this one. She's on the red course, chose that because she knows it's a little bit quicker in the finish, and now she starts to pull away from Ilikina. The crowd enjoying the fact that Kreiner has the lead. 5 gates to go, and still Austria leading with Marion Kreiner into the last few turns. Surely Kreiner gets it. Yes, she does. 0.37 the margin. Good run from Ilikina. Just a little bit relaxed, a little bit careless in the midsection. That lost her the race, but she was brilliant on the steep section at the top. She'll be a big name this season, I don't have any doubt about that. But Marion Kreiner is still at her very, very best and very difficult to beat. Ledecker managed it in the semi-finals, but Kreiner is back on the podium, so another 600 points for her. She only finished 7th in the first round of the World Cup this season. That was a little bit disappointing in Careza. Kalv winning, Caroline Kalv was winning, Tudica Shaver in second, Jörg of Germany third, Ochner of Italy fourth, Ledecker finishing in 5th place. And Ledecker with a real opportunity to go top of the World Cup standings, but just 1 place behind her in the World Cup standings at the moment, Patricia Kummer. And so we have 5th and 6th in the World Cup standings going head-to-head in the women's final. There is Patricia Kummer. And of course, number 17 in white is Ledecker. Good opening turns from Ledecker. Kummer has always been a little bit slower to get going, and then she starts to flow on the midsection. Here she comes, Kummer in orange on the red course. Ledecker working hard. She got the top turns absolutely accurate. Now she's starting to look a little bit scrappy as she comes down to the lower turns. Patricia Kummer will be quick on the last 3. Looks as though it's going to be Kummer of Switzerland. It is 0.22 of a second. Esther Ledecker started so well. Kummer, I think, showing the advantage of having more experience. She rode that so comfortably. She didn't push on the top. She was some way behind after just 4 gates, but then she relaxed and just started her magic, flowing nicely through the course, beautifully accurate on the front side, just as good on the back side, and that has been her ticket all the way through the knockout phases today. So Kummer, who was number 2 in the world last year without a victory, has got a victory after just 2 events. So that gives her 1,000 points, and she will go on to 1,400. And by my reckoning, she will be the new World Cup leader. Ledecker's moving up the rankings as well, but she's missed her opportunity to grab the yellow bib. And an excellent run all round. So Patricia Kummer, the champion. Well, that was a good race. Very well fought, with both riders having an opportunity to take it. Ledecker certainly getting ahead in the early stages. Now, what will happen in the men's? Kisslinger versus March for the 3rd place on the podium. And then, of course, Bergman and Promiger going for gold today. Number 27 is Seb Kisslinger. He's on yellow. A little easier to relax in the small final. The nerves have calmed down a little. Austria versus Italy, and the cheering will be for the man on the yellow course here in Bad Gastien. And a good start from Aaron March on the red. He's ridden those top few turns very, very neatly, but so did Ledecker, and then went on to lose. If March can stay clean from here, you'd think that he's done enough to win this one, but Kisslinger will attack in the bottom few gates. He's got nothing to lose at this stage, but another mistake from Kisslinger, and he's lost half a second. 0.86 in the end, the margin. Seb Kisslinger missing out. He goes fourth. Aaron March, 600 World Cup points, a decent share of the prize money today, and more importantly, he's on the podium. Great news for him, good news for his sponsors, good news for the Italian team as well. Nice and high on the line. Getting those front side turns in very, very early, and then just tweaking the edges to make sure that he's not too tight on the turn. Kisslinger, on the other hand, a little bit later, sliding into the lower part, 2-3 feet wide of the course on the front side. Not bad on the backside turns, but missing his opportunity on the front side turns and allowing Aaron March to go through and claim third place today. Bergman Promiger, well, you have to feel a little sorry for Aaron March. Remember, he produced exactly the same time as Promiger on the semi-final run, but missed out due to his qualifying time earlier on today. And that means that number one, Andy Promiger from San Johan, the world number one last year with 3 victories, looking to notch up his first victory of this season. And away they go. Promiger on the red, quite wide on the initial turn. Some frantic turns coming in from Bergman. My goodness, he is desperate to get the win here. He's not going to let this one go without a huge amount of effort, but he needs to tighten the turns. Now Promiger starts to show his class in the last few turns, and he's very, very close. Behind at the moment, but it could be tight. Oh my goodness, Promiger, who tried exactly the same trick as he did in the semi-finals. It worked against Aaron March. It did not work against Bergman, and Bergman was the man who wanted that one most. He attacked it from the very first gate, and that is a sensational run. So Germany take the honours in the men's event, and Bergman has claimed the win, 1,000 World Cup points, and the rest of his team, or the women's contingent of the team, are very, very happy with that. But give him credit, it wasn't the neatest run we've seen from Bergman, but he just gave it 100% on those top few turns. Once the gradient eased, then he started to go just that little bit too wide, and that's when Promiger started to come back into it. Promiger slightly bigger, there was a mistake, 2 or 3 feet wide of the turn, recovered quickly, but nothing he could do this time over the closing stages. And Bergman of Germany, the champion here in Bad Gastien.
Thank you.
Well, some happy faces, as you would expect. Patricia Kummer, the highest ranked woman in the final, was the one who came through to beat Ledecker. But in the men's, it was the underdog who fought hardest and reaped the rewards. Good riding from Germany's Bergman, and Andy Promiger just missing out. So the final ranking in the women's, Kummer, Ledecker, Kreiner, all on the podium. Russia's Ilikina, the silver medalist from Vancouver in 2010, in 4th. Sobolova, her teammate, in 5th. So the Russians with a good team. Ledina Geni of Switzerland in 6th position. And she'll take a fair amount of encouragement from the way things have gone so far today. In the men's, Bergman, Promiger, March, the three on the podium ahead of Seb Kisslinger. Lucas Mathis, the fastest qualifier, all he could do was get to the quarterfinals. Knocked out today by Bergman, the eventual winner. And then the points you can see for yourself. Well, they've been a little bit lucky. It was very misty first thing this morning. But credit to the organisation. They've done well to get this event underway, and saved, in fact, by the fact that they changed or decided to have a one-run race as opposed to the two-run format where they race once on the yellow and once on the red. It's not quite as fair. No one's disputing that. But it is very exciting. It's a little faster. They get less rest in between the rounds. Fitness plays a massive part. Well, still no sign of the overall rankings, so let's use the last few seconds just to have a look at the champion in the men's race. It was, of course, Bergman of Germany, who absolutely flew down the course like a gymnast. It wasn't neat, it wasn't particularly pretty, but it was good enough to beat this man, the favourite. Promiger having to settle for second today. So Germany getting the win in the men's, and of course Patricia Kummer taking the win in the women's. And that was an excellent ride for the Swiss rider.